Welcome to Sport Bike Girls, the podcast for women who are obsessed with sport bikes and all things motorcycle. Come join the ride. Hello, Sport Bike Girls. Welcome to episode 13. I hope your summertime riding season is off to a great start. For those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, you are probably now busy prepping for wintertime, maybe having to say goodbye to riding for just a few months. Here in the U.S., riding season is in full swing, and there are so many bike nights and other fun riding events in the works across the country. Babes Ride Out East Coast is happening right now, and I'd love to hear your stories about what it's like, especially if you're a first-time attendee. So please share. You know it's my goal to be there with you next year. In this week's episode, I am featuring a truly amazing woman, Leslie Reyes. Originally from the New York area, Leslie now resides in California. After a few attempts to learn to ride and get her motorcycle license when she was younger, she accomplished her goal at the age of 50. Leslie is the author of the new book, The Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle. In this very personal and intimate memoir, Leslie recounts growing up with a mother suffering from schizophrenia and the mental health issues she struggled with as a result of that trauma as a young child. Years of misdiagnoses, drug addiction, and codependent relationships led to many difficult years, but she overcame it all with tremendous strength and grace. Leslie is now a registered psychiatric nurse, helping and supporting others dealing with chemical dependencies. She's also a yoga teacher and talks with me about how discovering the concepts of Zen Buddhism helped transform her life and gave her the courage and tools she needed to accomplish her dreams of living a healthy, fulfilling life, as well as becoming the motorcycle rider she had long wanted to be. The book is a fast and engaging read. I think you'll be just as consumed by her story and the highly relatable lessons she has to share as I was. We touch on a wide range of subjects, including her insights into women's health, neurodiversity, and so much more. The Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle is available now on Amazon, and I hope you pick up a copy and take the time to read it. You won't be disappointed. This Moto Babe story is heartbreaking at times, yet inspiring. It was such a pleasure getting to know her. Her humor and her compassion are so uplifting and contagious. I'm so happy to be able to share her story with you here today. Please stay tuned. Hey, Sport Bike Girls, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to episode 13. I am so privileged to introduce you to Moto Babe, registered nurse, yoga teacher, author, Leslie Reyes. Leslie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here.
I want everyone to read this book, and I'm not even kidding or exaggerating. I don't care if you're into motorcycles or not. This story, it's such an intimate, personal story that I truly believe that everyone can relate to on some level. And I just want to start out by thank you for bravery and the courage to just be so honest and open and just share this. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to hear you talk about it and share your perspectives on it. But let's just start with the first question that I ask all my guests. What's your current ride?
My current ride is a 2021 Zero S, which is a 100% electric motorcycle. The brand is Zero because people are always like, wait, what is it? The model is an S, which is the base model for the street bike. But that is my current ride, and it's my first street bike.
Very cool. And I remember reading that you first rode that bike during your MSF course, and you just kind of fell in love with it, right?
I did. I rode on it was an XU, which they don't make anymore. It was like one of the first motorcycles that Zero made. So it's kind of like the size of a small dirt bike, and it was skinny and light, and I wanted that one, and they said, oh, they don't make that anymore. And the bike that I ended up getting was a lot more powerful and a lot heavier than the one that I learned on. So it was a little bit of a challenge switching over.
Of that, but that is really cool. And you're helping the environment too. So thank you.
Yeah, one would like to hope.
Good California girl, you.
I'm not against gas bikes though either, because they're still better for the environment than cars. So
totally. Absolutely. You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
So not only are you all those cool things I just mentioned, but you're a calendar girl. How did you come to be included in Doodle's calendar? Tell us.
Oh my God, I love Doodle. She's one of the big influences of why I decided to try to learn how to ride again after not passing the DMV test the first time 25 years ago. But she had put a shout out, I think, on maybe Instagram. It said she wanted to put a calendar together. She put one together last year because she said every time she was looking for a calendar of women on motorcycles, it was like women on bikinis on a motorcycle, right? So she's like, I want a motorcycle calendar of real women. Nice. So this was her second calendar that she did. She put a shout out, and I just submitted my photo, and I'm so psyched that she picked me, and she put me in for my favorite month of the year, which is June. It's I have my 66 jacket, the Route 66 jacket. It's also my birthday, June 6th. So, yeah.
And this episode will come out just before your birthday. So
yeah, cool.
Well, and that is we're referring to Carolyn, who's Doodle on a Motorcycle.
Yes,
photo blogger, and her YouTube channel is spectacular. It is
so awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really hoping to have her as a guest soon. She's just super cool. The cover of the book is spectacular. The colors, the photo, it's got this cool California vibe to it. Love it. But the book itself is so well written. It's so engaging. You've just bared your soul here. It's inspiring. And like I said, whether or not the reader has any interest in motorcycles, I truly believe that there's something that everyone can relate here. Then, maybe some of their struggles have not been as extreme as yours.
Mm-hmm.
It's very relatable on so many levels.
That's so great. I love that I'm hearing a lot of the same adjectives to describe my book over and over by people that don't know each other, whether they ride a motorcycle or not. And one is relatable. The other is, they say it's both tragic and hysterical. My uncle read it and said, it's like watching a train wreck that you can't turn your eyes away from, because everyone says you really can't put it down. You just want to know what's going to happen next. And
I don't recall reading a book so quickly in a very, very long time.
That's so awesome. Everyone's saying that to me too. And I love that no one can put it down.
Did you have an editor, or did you really just self-publish this, do this yourself?
Well, I did, but I hired people. Like I had a friend who, she has a master's degree in library science, and she specialized in when she was studying was like memoir, how to create a memoir. So I at first took this class that was just like, write your book in 30 days, because I had really, it's taken me a long time to write this book. It was 2 different books at one point. So then I took this workshop, and they just structure you so you get it done. And then the real work starts because once I had pretty much everything that was going to be in the book, I went to my friend who had a lot of experience with, creating memoirs. She helped me with some of the creative aspects of it. And I asked a few friends of mine that I considered my target audience to sort of take a look, and these are people that knew me for a long time. So they were like, you really don't hold back on this story. You should definitely put this story in there. So there was some input like that. But I think when it comes to writing a book, you can't edit yourself when you're first writing. You just got to put it out there, and you have to write as if no one's ever going to read it. Like, you have to write in a way like you're writing your diary, because I think what made it easy for me to put it all out there was knowing that, like, the books that I've read, the authors haven't held anything back. They were raw, they were vulnerable, and it helped me. It didn't seem like they were just writing a book solely for themselves. Like, it was So I wanted to do that too, because if you read a good book, it can really change your perspective. So it was important for me to just be egoless. And, there's a lot of people in my book that were part of my story, and I cleared it with a lot of them. Are you okay with me telling, because this affected me? And, a few people in my life, I don't even want to read the first draft because I want you to tell your point of view, your story. So, I had a lot of encouragement there too, but
probably why it comes across as such an authentic voice, that you had that, mindset going into it.
I'll say another thing about putting it all out there. I've always been sort of, in work and at school, it's always been a hard thing for me that people it's TMI. And I always feel like, well, if you just own all your stuff, no one can really use it against you. Like, we all have our things, our stuff, but I found that writing a book, TMI is brilliant. TMI at work gets you into the H&R office. TMI at school gets you called into the principal's office. But I finally found the right platform for TMI.
Yes, you did. That is really funny. You refer to your motorcycle as your guru, which I love that so much. And just getting back to the title of the book, it's obviously paying homage to the classic Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which was, such a brilliant book.
Yeah.
Tell us what the concept of Zen means to you.
Well, see, here's the thing. I got to be honest, when I picked that title, I wasn't thinking about Robert Pirsig's book. I was only 4 years old when that book came out. And I had started to read it, and then I kind of put it aside because I was like, you know what, I don't want to unintentionally plagiarize anything. But the real reason that I named that book, my book, The Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle, was because I had finally integrated this concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And the author Jen Sincero, we used to hang out when we were both living in Los Angeles. And I remember one day her life just took off, and she calls me up and she's like, I just learned this concept. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So think about it. If you're being really flaky and nonchalant and you're not focused, then you're kind of doing everything that way. And I knew what she meant, but I'm like, how do you go from understanding it to living it? And it was with the motorcycle that I was like, I went through a lot of self-doubt, like, this is really dangerous. I'm too flaky. I'm too panicky. I'm not brave enough, the self-talk. And it was, honestly, I spent so much money because electric motorcycles are not cheap. And I thought, I have to learn. I bought this motorcycle. Now I'm going to have to learn how to ride it. What kind of a person rides a motorcycle safely and effectively? And it was like, I have to be non-reactive. I'm a reactive person, I kind of get scared really easily. So I have to be responsive instead of reactive. So it really kind of started with that. And then when I was like, oh my God, who came up with this idea? Where did this originate? How a person does one thing is how a person does everything. And it turned out there's a lot of self-help authors that talk about it, but it comes from Zen philosophy of basically living in the present. So that's where I was like, the Zen of learning to ride a motorcycle for me was learning how to be mindful, learning how to be present, learning how to, panic is a byproduct of worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, right? There's a difference between planning for the future, right, and worrying about the future, right? And those are the things that I felt like that's when I finally learned what the concept of Zen is. And not that I considered myself a Zen person by the definition of our sort of slang definition. Oh, I'm just blissed out, right?
So Zen.
It's really Zen is something that you're practicing all the time to get to that point. To me, that's what Zen, what the lesson from my motorcycle being my guru and learning how a person does one thing is how a person does everything.
Yeah, until someone has actually attempted like Buddhist meditation, like I have in the past, it
Mm-hmm.
seems so simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
It is so mentally challenging, so
Yeah.
incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Very difficult. It's the concept.
It is still to this day. It is hard not to react.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is hard to respond, because you have to pause. Our there's that part of our brain that is fully formed when we're born. That's just kicking and screaming and trying to stay alive. And for the rest of your life, you're trying to overcome that with wisdom, to not be reactive.
Yeah.
Still trying not to react.
I absolutely sympathize with that. I love the organization of the book too. It's organized into 10 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
each titled Zen Motorcycle Habit, number 1, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Did you come up with these 10 habits? Is this kind of your interpretation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's briefly go through those.
Okay.
10 habits of Zen motorcycle habits. Let's start with Zen motorcycle habit number 1. Respond to situation instead of react.
Right. Like I was saying, because reacting is that fight or flight response that we have.
Yeah.
Where responding, it's like you're trying to build responses on a motorcycle. You're also trying to build responses in life. And I think in my book, I talk about my husband it was one cranky night after work. We're both cranky watching TV, and I'm flipping through the channels, and he kind of made a joke, and I just threw the remote at him, and it was so rude. And I'm like, that's a reaction.
That's pretty
That's
reactive.
a reaction. That was not thought out, Why did I just say, here, just take this stupid remote away from me. Take it away. That would have been the response. Here you go.
Zen motorcycle habit number 2. Understand and respect your own limitations and set your own pace.
I totally broke that rule a couple days ago. Yep. And I hurt myself. And, I moved out of LA recently to a nice rural town with open roads and, no traffic. So what I needed to be thinking is, hey, you're in a new town with new roads, with a different traffic culture. Yeah, LA is very difficult to drive in, right? To ride a motorcycle, but I'm in a different place. So I went out on my motorcycle sort of with this mindset of, it's going to be so easy breezy to ride my motorcycle around here because I don't have to worry about the crazy LA traffic. But I realized there's no side streets to just turn around on because these are all long, gravelly streets. And you know how most streets, they're higher up in the middle than they are on the sides so that the water drains. Well, it's even in a rural area where there's no sewers, just ditches, right? It was really, so usually I know better. Where I am in my motorcycle journey, I am not good at U-turns. Most people aren't, even advanced riders.
I've heard their challenge.
And I was trying to find a place to put my kickstand down so I could just get off the motorcycle and turn it around. That's how I usually do a U-turn, right?
A little kickstand spin. Yeah.
Yeah. But everywhere I tried to put the kickstand down, it wouldn't, it was like the road was too high. It was too, but instead of just, really just taking my time, I was like, I got really impatient. I wanted to turn around. Didn't respect the fact I'm in a new place. I don't know these roads that well. I totally rode the motorcycle into a ditch, flipped myself over the handlebars, knocked the wind out of myself, and I'm fine because I'm all the gear all the time. And I probably would have broken something if I didn't have my armor on. So I'm fine. I broke one of the turn signal lights. I knocked one of my foot pegs off, but I did not respect the fact that I was in a new town. I'm still a new rider, and I'm really bad at U-turns, and I just needed to respect where I was.
Well, I think we just covered number 4 and 5. If you something, fix it. don't know something, learn.
Right. So I have to take my cones, and I recommend everyone should do this at least 3 times a year. At least 3 times a year. Get a little set of cones, like they have little tiny ones off of Amazon. Find a parking lot and just do some weaving in and out and U-turns, because yeah, practice good habits often. That's another. Which one is that?
Well, we just covered number 6. If you fall down, get back up.
Yeah,
you did. So look in the direction you want to go,
not where you don't want to go. How often do we say things like, I don't want to crash. I don't want to ride my motorcycle into that ditch. And instead of saying, with motorcycles, it's really important to turn your head and really lift up your chin and look into the turn. Because if you look at the ground, you're going to fall. And I think that was an analogy for my fear of my mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. She was in and out of mental institutions my whole life. And the relationships and the trauma in the family that was caused by this. And was always this feeling of, I don't want to end up like my mom. I don't want to end up like that. I don't want people to be afraid of me and leave me because I'm crazy. I don't want them to find out that my mother's crazy. And, instead of focusing on, well, who do you want to be? You're focused on who you don't want to be. I actually feel like that's a big problem with our society right now in this country. We're all focused on what we're afraid of becoming instead of, well, what kind of a society do we want to be? Instead of worrying about what we're afraid of. Because ultimately, that's what you end up becoming, because there is no visual in your mind for the word no. So if you're saying, I never want to date another abusive person again, you're almost creating a vision of an abusive person again in your mind, instead of saying, I want to find love. Or, if you, even as something as simple as, I don't want to be vulnerable. Well, then you can't look for love, because you cannot not be vulnerable. So you have to focus on what you want. I want to find love, not focusing on, I don't want to be vulnerable. So that's looking in the direction you want to go instead of where you don't want to go.
Oh my gosh, you're literally manifesting the wrong thing, the thing that you don't want, by saying that.
You're creating a negative fantasy when you say what you don't want, because you literally, I don't want to forget my yoga mat. You're literally creating a picture in your mind of forgetting your yoga mat at the yoga studio. Instead, you want to change the language in your mind. I want to remember to bring my yoga mat home with me. It's even as simple as that, but it works on a big level. My husband, for example, he said, I don't want another job where I'm sitting in traffic by myself, because that's what he was doing at his last job. And then the next job he took, he was delivering motorcycles. So he was sitting in traffic all day in LA. And finally he came home and he said, I really just wish I could work in the garage with the guys. And it was so crazy, because it was like 2 days later, his boss like, do you like delivering the motorcycles? Because I really need help in the garage. That usually doesn't happen that literal, but in that case it did.
Oh my gosh. So let's go back to the beginning again. You're originally from New Jersey.
Right.
You did mention that your mother was schizophrenic, suffered from mental illness. When you were 10 years old, you prevented her suicide. I cannot even begin to fathom how intense a situation that was, and how that changed your life.
Yeah, because it was really almost an idyllic childhood. With all my relatives, and every weekend going to the Filipino relatives' houses. And I remember when bringing my mother's side of the family over to one of the Filipino weekend bashes that we always had. And, years later, my cousin said, wow, I totally remember going to your Filipino family's house. And I remember thinking to myself as a child, there are so many happy people here, so it really was, because the two things sort of happened at the same time. Half of the Filipino family moved to California. And then my mother that was right around the time that my mother had tried to commit suicide. But yes, I feel like, talk about the fight or flight response. It was like you're just triggered back to that, because, your body is just trying to protect you. Your body says, oh, you're in danger. the person who's supposed to protect you is not going to be able to do it anymore. You better be on guard, so there's this sort of constant panic, constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Of course. Yeah. And that's when the panic attack started. And did your issues with drugs start as a teenager, or what did it come later?
Well, that was more about, it was, for me, I grew up in the 80s. So it was just say no, just say no. So I was not, and then when I was pursuing a singing career, I didn't want to screw up my vocal cords. My drug was codependency. I was always dating people who were addicted to drugs, which was weird because I had no experience. And I'm, because I'm half Filipino, I inherited that enzyme deficiency that causes the Asian flush. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Some Asians, when we drink, it goes directly into the bloodstream and your face just turns bright red. So I have a very low tolerance for alcohol. But so for me, it was romance. It was having a crush. It was the fantasy of what could be, that could save me from this dark, life of surrounded by my mother in and out of the hospital. It's very scary as a child. You're still trying to figure out what reality is when you're 7, 8 years old. And to have a parent that's not quite sure of what reality is either, it was really scary sometimes.
Now, speaking of boyfriends, your first motorcycle experience was in 1994 when you were still in New Jersey. Your first serious boyfriend started to teach you how to ride his little Yamaha.
Yeah, that was the first time I tried to learn to ride. My first ride on a motorcycle was with my dad when I was about 10. He put me on the back of his BMW. But I was dating who's now my husband. And he and his roommate had this little 50cc Yamaha YSR, and they tried to teach me. But, they wanted to ride their own motorcycles. They didn't want to sit in the parking lot with me all summer. So I didn't get enough practice. And then I panicked because I still didn't have my panic. My flight or fight response was still on overdrive at that time in my life. And I just was like, perfect. I was like, forget it. I just want to sit on the back. It was just too scary. Kind of wished, I had learned.
But to start learning at 50, kudos to you. I mean, I'm still learning in my 50s.
That was me.
It's very inspiring. What prompted you to want to become a nurse?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be the kind of nurse that I needed when I was in a mental health crisis. And I wanted to be the kind of nurse that my mother needed. There's a lot of unconscious bias. I'm not saying people are racist or sexist on purpose in the healthcare field, but it's built into the language. If you just look at the words hysterectomy, the word the ectomy means to remove something. So an appendectomy is when you have your appendix removed. So what's a hysterectomy? You're having your hysteria removed. That's literally what it means. It's like we really, and there are, what are the treatments for our women when we're having hormonal imbalances or going through menopause or anything like that? Antidepressants. We're crazy, right? Just give us and then just remove all the sex organs. Just remove them all. This is, so it's, and this is just how it is, and until people sort of, now that we have more women in the medical field, I mean, they weren't even allowed to go to medical school like 100 years ago. So I'm hoping we're going to see things even out. It's the same thing with, autism, ADHD, OCD. A lot of males get help, and women get diagnosed with psychiatric disorders when they're having a neurological difference, a neurodivergent brain, right?
I was really fascinated when you said that you were actually just recently diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. I have a son who's a high functioning Asperger's. I hate saying that. It's such
because it's not high functioning, right? Yeah. It's like actually you're desperately trying to fit into a world that wasn't created.
Exactly. And they don't even use the term Asperger's anymore.
It's
part of the ASD. Yeah. But women are so grossly underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And like exactly like you said, it's a psychiatric disorder. No, autism is not a psychiatric disorder. No. It's a developmental.
Right. It's not, it's a developmental difference. It's not even a disorder, because now they're finding that people who are on the, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, those are all just neurodiverse minds. I didn't know, this is so, it's kind of off topic, but I didn't know that the whole binary sex thing was a product of Western culture, of keeping kingdoms and things like that in the family. And where the more tribal cultures, like even in the Philippines, I don't know if you know any Filipinos. Do you notice how they'll call women he and men she? They'll get them reverse mixed up because there was no he and she in their original language. But now they're very, very, they've adopted the whole Catholic thing. But, before the Western cultures came, and same with Native Americans, there were a lot of, but that's about the neurodiversity. So yeah, it was weird. My therapist at the time, she worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum and still kind of follows them into adulthood. And she had said things to me like a lot. Some people don't even feel like they fit in on this planet, not realizing she was referring to people on the spectrum. And the more and more I talked to her, she said, you sound like my Asperger's clients. And then around that same time, my YouTube channel kept recommending videos about women who are on the autism spectrum. And it's crazy because like the first video I watched, I just cried because I related to it so much. And then I got so mad because I've been diagnosed with all the things that most women on the spectrum are misdiagnosed with. And you're walking around thinking there's something wrong with you that you need to fix, when it's not that you need to fix something. You just need to understand how your neurological system works.
Not try and be like everybody else.
Right. Like now I realize when I didn't understand. I used to say to my friends when would have a meltdown, I'm like, I feel like I'm having a seizure. When you get, now I know not how to avoid getting overwhelmed. I used to think I was a bad person. Now I just realize my neurological makeup can only take so much, and you're going to have a meltdown if you don't monitor yourself. With the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or whatever they give women, then you're left thinking, I have to fix some character defect. Yeah.
You're made to feel like you have to constantly fill this hole, and sadly people choose to fill it with bad sexual relations.
That was my choice. I needed that. Because there's this thing when you hear people say, I wish I could be normal, because I don't necessarily, I like being unique and quirky, but I didn't want my differences to offend people. And that's the thing. It's like when we just communicate so differently. Did your son speak of that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, he just recently graduated from college, and he's kind of out of that protected cocoon of school, the regimented school where he did really well. He struggled as a kid because,
right. I did well in college. I did great in college also, because it's structured just enough to let you do it your way, but they're structuring you, I felt lost when I graduated from college. And I think I even mentioned that in my book. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with myself?
That's so challenging. What prompted the move to LA? Was it because your family was moving out there? You wanted to be closer to them, or was it?
Oh, I wanted to pursue my music. I had been in New Jersey, kind of, going into Manhattan, and I was auditioning for things, and I was getting little bit parts here and there. And, I got to be honest, one of the reasons I ended up moving to LA at the time, it was cheaper than living in the suburbs in New Jersey. I was living with my father still for free, and he was hardly ever home because he was always on business trips, and he had a girlfriend that lived in another state. So I was like, I just can't justify moving out. I practically have this place to myself. It's going to cost me at the time, right, $700-800 a month in rent, to live in New Jersey. So I'm like, I need to move out though. I just felt like I was getting too old. I'm like, I'm moving to LA. I'm going to move there. It's cheaper at the time than New Jersey. The sun's always out. I can keep my car. You know, I was thinking about moving to Manhattan because it was nearby. But that's honestly what prompted it. Also, I was still trying to pursue a music career at the time. So I wanted to be near an entertainment hub. So that's why LA won out over San Diego.
So you decided one day, okay, this isn't working out. Now I'm going to become a nurse. I'm going to commit and go to nursing school. That's a massive commitment.
That was, you know, I think it was, you know, like I said, when I first moved to LA, it was a bargain. And then the housing bubble happened and everything went through. I mean, there were houses, you could buy a house in Venice for $200,000-$300,000 when I moved down. Now you can barely get one for $2 to $3 million in Venice, right? So I kind of was like, you know, I wanted to go and be the kind of nurse that I had needed when I was hospitalized. And, you know, I got lucky because my dad was like, you know, so many Filipinos go, you ever hear that comedian Joe Coy?
Oh, yes, he's hilarious. Yeah.
He's like, that's every Filipino becomes a nurse. Your mother crushed your dreams. So, of course, my dad was thrilled when he heard I wanted to become a nurse. And then I figured I could also move back to LA and have a living wage as a nurse. But, you know, I have to say, I did not learn a lot about addiction or mental health in nursing school. They barely touch on it. Everything I really learned was from all the codependent relationships I had, going to 12-step meetings, growing up with a schizophrenic mother. You know, that's where I really learned a lot.
And your husband, he was really influential in helping you to finally get your motorcycle license.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Doodle had a lot more than my husband.
Okay.
What happened was, you know, we had a bucket list when we were younger. He wanted to buy a Harley and ride it up the coast. So I said, we need to move to California and you need to buy the Harley and we need to ride up the coast. We're running out of time. We're not getting any younger. So we finally bought the Harley. And after the first ride, we took a ride through this area in LA County called Palos Verdes, which is really beautiful. Just all cliffs and ocean. You know, I had been watching some videos of Doodles, you know, and I think there was one video where she said she didn't even know that motorcycles had manual transmissions. She'd never ridden dirt bikes before. No one in her family had any knowledge of motor. She just learned it all herself. And I thought, you know, the way it happened in my family and with my husband was everyone rode dirt bikes and from the time they were little kids. So I thought, I just was under the impression, like, if you didn't start off on a dirt bike before you were like 18 years old, it just wasn't something that people did. And here she is riding around and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know, so I was already feeling like I wanted, you know, from watching her, I was getting inspired. Then after we took the Harley through Palos Verdes, I realized I was going to want to go on motorcycle rides more often than he was probably going to want to take me. And I told him, I want to learn how to ride again. And he's like, are you kidding me? Because I had moved, you know, we were in New Jersey. I moved back to New Jersey to go to nursing school. And then with the plan to move back to LA so I could afford to live here the way I wanted to, you know. And so when we finally came back to LA, my husband was like, we just moved from a rural area in New Jersey where it would have been perfect for you to learn. And now we're living in the absolute worst city to learn to ride a motorcycle, and you want to learn. So he was really annoyed with me at first.
Because I remember when we had our phone conversation, I made a comment that, oh my God, I cannot even imagine. I've been to LA twice, and I said, I cannot even imagine riding a bike out there. I would be terrified to drive a car, those freeways, those on-off ramps. You made a really interesting observation about riding on East Coast versus West Coast, how much safer and how much more you enjoy it there for various reasons, the ability to lane split and just being more chill.
Right. People, well, there is a motorcycle. Not that there aren't jerks out here too. Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine told me she was pulling out to make a right turn and pulled out right in front of him, my friend, and he you know, he hit her, and he's okay though, but still it's dangerous, right? But there is a culture here. And actually in 2016, California officially, they used to just allow it, but it's actually officially legal. Lane filter, they call it, and there are rules. If you open up a door because you think that's funny or try to impede a motorcyclist in California, that is actually illegal, and you will get a moving violation ticket for doing something like that. And, you know, my husband always used to tell me, like, in the United States, 33% of motorcycle sales are in California because it's always motorcycle season out here. So there just is, I think there's just a little more awareness. I feel like everyone knows someone. And the most heartwarming thing for me was on the West Coast was we were on the 110 freeway, jam-packed downtown in the middle of rush hour. One person kind of glanced over their shoulder and saw us on the Harley. And the next thing you know, it just parted like the Red Sea. They just let us through. That's not to say it's not dangerous, but that would not happen in New Jersey. New Jersey, everyone is in a competition to get to the red light first. So
just summarizing the book, I mean, there are some really rough, harrowing, you know, tales that you share. I mean, regarding, you know, the drugs and people that you dated, and, you know, just some really sad, heartbreaking things. But there's also some really funny anecdotes, I have to say. One of my favorite stories is you're talking about your roommate, Danielle, and you're both, quote unquote, living in this haunted apartment.
Haunted apartment. To this day, that's ever stepped foot in this apartment, even if they don't believe in that kind of stuff, like, it was something wrong with that place. A friend of mine went on a rabbit hole to try to find out, like, it turns out there was a lot of sex trafficking and drug trafficking within less than a mile of that actual apartment, like blocks away. So it's possible some creepy stuff may have happened in that. People were feeling that energy. It was heavy.
And then to top it off, one night, you two of you drank some cannabis-laced iced tea, and she had this paranoid freak out.
Yeah, my tolerance was a little higher than hers. I'm like, oh, this will be fine. I'll just put you right to sleep, because that's what it did for me. But she actually was tripping, and it was right after poor Heath Ledger had an accidental overdose. So she was so afraid that she's, I'm going to look like Heath Ledger. But she would laugh so hard when we would talk about that story later, because it was just so ridiculous. Like, you're not going to die from a cannabis iced tea.
You wrote it was just so funny. So, I mean, there's some really lighthearted moments. I think there's just so much for everyone to, like I said, relate to and learn from. And it's such a great read. I want everyone to buy it on Amazon.
Me too. I want everyone to buy it. It's for my birthday. That's all I want for my birthday, is for everyone to buy my book.
You're going to make that happen. Absolutely. Tell everyone about your YouTube channel, because you made videos when you were first learning and starting. And I think they'd be great for women, like not only my age, but just anyone starting out, just to say, you know, there's challenges, but it's funny. And if I can get through this, I shouldn't be scared, and I should push myself to really try.
Yeah, I haven't made, you know, as many videos for my YouTube channel as I did last year. My YouTube channel is Lola Leslie 66. And
just like your Instagram hashtag.
Just like my Instagram hashtag is also Lola Leslie. And I believe that's also my TikTok hashtag.
Oh, you're on TikTok too. Okay. I'll find you.
I'm still trying to learn how to TikTok. But yes. So my channel was when I couldn't quite go out and practice by myself yet. I had just gotten my motorcycle, and I gave my camera to my husband one day, and he took like a 38-second video of me tooling around a parking lot, and it got like 19,000 views on YouTube. And it happened again, but I was like, well, guys, since people are actually watching this, and whenever I would want to ride my motorcycle, but I couldn't ride it because I literally couldn't get my motorcycle out of my driveway because it was a real steep, sharp turn right onto a main road right in front of a Target shopping center. So it's like you really have to have I told my husband, by the time I can get this motorcycle out of this driveway by myself, I'll be able to ride anywhere, because it's very treacherous. And so I would be so frustrated. I felt like I'm never going to be able to get out of here. I'm never going to be able to go riding by myself. I'm going to be in a parking lot forever. So I would make videos and talk about what I was frustrated about and what I learned and what I was doing. And so those videos are all there. And then, once I actually got out of the parking lot and started going on a lot of rides, I kind of stopped making as many videos because I'm riding.
Maybe you'll start again, but still there's a whole bunch there for people to enjoy and to learn from. So definitely I encourage people to check them out. I want to hear about your recent adventure riding with the Litas in LA.
That was so fun. That was so much fun.
Are you an official Lita?
I think anybody who wants to ride with the Litas is an official Lita. Like not a motorcycle club like that has patches. I just believe it's a woman and she makes a lot of t-shirts. So like we're not making our own patches or anything. It's not like that. It's just a collective to encourage other women to get together and ride. And I'm thinking about starting a chapter. I moved to a new town up here in near Folsom in Gold Country in California, El Dorado County. There's now Lita's chapter here. There's one in Sacramento. That's about an hour from me. And then there's one in Lake Tahoe, which is another hour in the other direction from me. But there's not really one right around this. There's a string of old gold mining towns in the foothills on the other side of Lake Tahoe, west of Tahoe. And there's no Lita's branch here. So if I can find another woman in my area, you just need two women to start a Lita's chapter.
Oh, that would be such a great goal. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
The Leslie Litas.
Well, it would be the El Dorado County Litas, which is cool. It sounds like the Wild West.
I'm going to call it the Leslie Litas.
That's cute. Fun. It was just, just the camaraderie and the fellowship. It's just so nice. Yeah, through Griffith Park where the observatory is. I also have to give a shout out to Hollywood Electrics. That's where I bought my motorcycle because they hosted my my book release party ride. They didn't have a group ride for 2 years because of the pandemic. And I kind of like on a whim was like, what am I going to do for my book release party? So I just figured, let me ask them. Maybe they'll help me put some party together. And they're like, you know what? Well, we haven't done a group ride in 2 years. Why don't we do a group ride? And that was so amazing. It was right at sunset. We went past the Hollywood sign and then went to this amazing pizza place. So I will forever hold Hollywood Electrics dear to my heart for doing that for me and promoting my book for me. So
that's amazing. That's so cool. Are you going to travel the country, go anywhere else to promote the book?
Yeah, right now I'm just trying to settle into my new digs, but I have an audiobook coming out. So I'm working on that. I am hoping to have that before fall. So, people can listen to that as they're driving home from whatever vacation or driving off to college. I'm not narrating it myself. I had a real artist narrate it because quite honestly, my voice can get really loud. I have the part of my spectrum disorder is I have a hard time moderating my people think I'm yelling at them when I'm not. It was okay in New Jersey because everyone's sort of yelling at each other out there. California's like, you yelling at me? I'm like, oh my God, no, it's just my loud autistic voice. So I had somebody else. I thought, you know what? Too many people have complained that my voice is too loud. So I don't want people feeling like they're being yelled at if they're listening to my book. Well, I don't know. Maybe I will. Hey, if I sell enough books and I can hire a producer that can kind of help me read it myself, or if I can get someone famous to read it for me, that would be, if I could get Reese Witherspoon or someone like that to read it for me, that would.
I need an agent to set up Oh, wow. Well, if you come to New York, anywhere in the tri-state area, I will be there. I would love that so much.
Really hope that people have a look at my book. You can download the first 2 chapters for free. See if you like it. Okay. At my website, there's the Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle.com. And it's also at LeslieReyesAuthor.com.
Oh, you have 2 different websites.
Well, yeah, one is for the book. Mainly. The LeslieReyesAuthor.com is I will have when I'm working on a book actually about it's about women on the spectrum who are being misdiagnosed. Basically, there's just not enough information out there. So that will be my next book. So to keep track of like all the books, any books stuff, it would be LeslieReyesAuthor.com. Specifically about the Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle is at the Zen of Learning to Ride a Motorcycle.com.
Please, everyone, follow her on Instagram. Do you have a Facebook page too?
Yes. Also Lola Leslie 66.
Fantastic. And of course, YouTube, and watch all those amazing videos. Leslie, I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much for writing this book. I love, we're about the same age. I love that inadvertently you're inspiring also women of a certain age. Screw it. I want to do this and I'm going to make it happen. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
For this beautiful book that you shared with everybody.
Oh, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share it with your audience. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, Leslie. Have a great night. Okay.
You too. Thanks.
Safe, everyone. Bye-bye. That's all for today. Thank you so much for being here. Please follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SportBikeGirls for a complete schedule of all upcoming episodes, as well as more information about all of my amazing guests. Have a great day.